I walked through the hospital doors, still wearing the black dress from my father's memorial service, and the attorney's words were still ringing in my ears. My dad, the quiet janitor who worked night shifts for 30 years, had secretly built a real estate empire worth $43 million and left every single penny of it to me. But when I pulled into my mother's driveway to share the news, I heard voices coming through the open kitchen window. What my mother, my older brother, and his wife were planning inside that house made my hands go completely numb, and they had absolutely no idea. I was standing 3 feet away on the other side of the screen door, hearing every single word. Before I tell you what they said, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe. If you have ever been stabbed in the back by the people who were supposed to protect you, you need to hear how this ends. My name is Vivian. I am 31 years old, and I work as a fraud investigator for one of the largest insurance companies in Chicago. My entire career revolves around catching liars. I examine falsified claims, fabricated medical records, and staged accidents for a living. I can smell deception the way a bloodhound picks up a scent in the woods, and right there on my mother's porch, the scent was overwhelming. My father Raymond passed away 6 days ago. Pancreatic cancer. He fought it privately, never complaining, never asking anyone for sympathy. He worked as a janitor at a downtown office tower for 3 decades. He rode the same bus. He packed the same ham sandwich every single night. Everyone in our family treated him like a background character in their own personal movie. Everyone except me. My brother Marcus was the family star. He was 37, loud, flashy, and absolutely obsessed with the appearance of wealth. He drove a leased Mercedes, wore designer suits he could not actually afford, and ran a so-called consulting firm that had never turned a profit in 5 years of operation. His wife Janelle was even worse. She came from old money that had long since dried up, but she carried herself like she was still sitting on a trust fund. Together, they had convinced my mother Lorraine that Marcus was the future patriarch of the family, the one destined to carry on our legacy. And my mother? Lorraine had always made it clear where I stood. Marcus was her golden miracle. I was the accident that complicated her 20s. She never said it in those exact words, but she did not need to. Every Christmas, every birthday, every family dinner made the hierarchy painfully obvious. So when I stood on that porch and heard Marcus's voice booming through the screen, my stomach did not drop from surprise. It dropped from confirmation. Vivian is going to have to face facts, Marcus said loudly. I could hear ice cubes clinking in a glass. Dad left nothing. Absolutely nothing. The man cleaned toilets his whole life. There is no savings, no pension worth anything, no life insurance. That house she is living in has a mortgage she cannot cover on her own now that Dad's income is gone. My mother's voice came next, sharp and impatient. She needs to sell that house immediately and give you the money to invest in your business, Marcus. You are the only one in this family with a real plan for the future. Your consulting firm just needs one big capital injection and it will take off. Janelle chimed in with a laugh that made my skin crawl. Honestly, Lorraine, Vivian should just move into a studio apartment. She is single, no kids, no life. What does she need a 3-bedroom house for? Marcus needs the capital way more than she needs extra bedrooms. Then I heard the sound of paper sliding across the kitchen table. Marcus spoke again, his voice dropping to that smooth, rehearsed tone he used when he was about to run a con. I had my buddy at the legal aid office draft this up. It is a general power of attorney. We tell Vivian it is to help manage Dad's estate, that there is paperwork and debt collectors she cannot handle alone while she is grieving. She is going to be crying so hard she will not read past the first paragraph. Once she signs it, I have full authority to sell the house, liquidate any accounts, and redirect the funds straight into my business operating account. My mother laughed. A real, genuine laugh. She has always been so emotional, Lorraine said dismissively. She loved that man way too much. Just hand her the pen while she is still a mess and it will all be over in 10 minutes. I gripped the railing of the porch so hard the wood creaked. The manila envelope in my purse suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Inside that envelope was the most shocking document I had ever read. My father, the quiet janitor, had been secretly purchasing small residential properties across the south side of Chicago for over 20 years. He started with a crumbling duplex he bought at a tax auction for $9,000. He fixed it up himself, rented it out, saved every dollar, and bought another one. Then another, then another. He never told a soul. He operated through a blind trust managed by a private attorney downtown. By the time he died, Raymond owned 34 residential rental properties, 2 small commercial buildings near the university, and a portfolio of index funds he had been feeding for 2 decades. The total assessed value was $43 million. And every single asset was left to me in an airtight ironclad trust document. Not a penny to Marcus. Not a penny to Lorraine. Not a penny to anyone else. Just me. His quiet daughter who actually bothered to sit with him during chemo, while the rest of the family pretended he was already dead. I had the power to walk into that kitchen and end their pathetic scheme in 5 seconds. But walking in and screaming would give them exactly what they expected from emotional, predictable Vivian. They wanted the crying girl they could manipulate. Instead, they were going to get the fraud investigator. I wiped my eyes, took 3 slow breaths, and pushed the screen door open with a loud, theatrical sniffle. I let my shoulders sag. I let my lip tremble. I walked into that kitchen looking exactly like the broken, helpless little sister they were counting on. The performance started instantly. My mother jumped up from the table and wrapped me in a hug that felt about as warm as a hospital waiting room. "My poor baby," Lorraine cooed, rubbing my back stiffly. "We were just talking about how much we miss your father. We are all so heartbroken." Marcus stood up, adjusting his cuffs like he was about to close a business deal. He put on his serious older brother face. "Viv, I know this is the hardest time of your life, but I need to talk to you about something important. Dad left behind a lot of loose ends. Bills, mortgage payments, some debts we did not know about. You should not have to deal with all of that while you are grieving. I have been looking into it, and I think the smartest move is to let me step in and handle the financial side. I have experience running a business. I know how to negotiate with creditors." He pulled the document out from under a napkin and slid it across the table. "It is just a simple authorization form," Marcus said casually. "It lets me talk to the bank on your behalf, deal with the mortgage company, and make sure nothing falls through the cracks. You just focus on healing. Let me carry the weight." I stared at the paper. In my professional life, I had seen hundreds of fraudulent documents. This one was laughably amateur. The legal language was vague, the clauses were absurdly broad, and it essentially gave Marcus unlimited control over every financial instrument connected to my name. If a real grieving woman signed this without reading it, she would wake up homeless. I picked up the pen Marcus had placed next to the document. My hand was shaking beautifully. Years of interviewing scam artists had taught me exactly how to mirror vulnerability. I let a tear roll down my cheek as I pressed the pen to paper. But here is what Marcus did not know. 6 years ago, when I first started working fraud cases, my father and I sat down with his estate attorney and created a distress signature protocol. It was my dad's idea, actually. He had read about financial exploitation of elderly people, and it terrified him. So we registered an alternate version of my signature with every major financial institution connected to my accounts. If I ever signed using that specific variation, a silent flag would immediately trigger in the bank's fraud detection system. The document would be rendered legally void, and an automatic investigation would launch without alerting whoever presented it. I signed every page Marcus put in front of me using that exact distress signature. I even added a little whimper as I finished each page for dramatic effect. Marcus snatched the papers up before the ink was dry. He could not hide the grin that flashed across his face. He tucked them into a folder and patted my shoulder. "You did the right thing, Viv. I am going to take care of everything." Janelle was already on her phone, probably browsing luxury vacation rentals. My mother poured herself another glass of wine and did not even ask if I wanted water. The second I got into my car, I dropped every trace of the crying act. I pulled out my phone and sent an encrypted message to my father's estate attorney, Mr. Callahan. The trap is set. Marcus has the signed documents. Please proceed with the full activation of the trust. Register all 34 properties and both commercial buildings under my holding company immediately. I also need the complete tenant records for the commercial building on Drexel Avenue. Mr. Callahan responded within minutes. He confirmed that the trust transfer was already in process and that he would have full tenant information by morning. Then he added a single line that made me smile for the first time in a week. You should know that one of the commercial tenants on Drexel Avenue is a consulting firm registered to a Marcus Caldwell. My brother's failing business operated out of a building my father secretly owned, a building that now belonged to me. The universe has a brutal sense of humor. That night, Marcus wasted no time. He and Janelle showed up at my house while I was supposedly asleep. I watched the security cameras from my bedroom as Janelle went through my living room, pulling framed photographs off the walls to check if any of them hid a safe. Marcus rifled through my father's old desk in the basement, tearing open drawers and dumping folders onto the floor. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. Every important document was locked in Mr. Pablety. There was nothing to find. Callahan's vault downtown. They left around midnight, carrying a box of my father's old watches, a vintage record player, and a small jewelry box that had belonged to my grandmother. Janelle tossed the box into the back seat of the Mercedes, like it was fast food trash. I let them take it all. Physical objects meant nothing compared to the financial reckoning headed their way. 2 days later, Marcus marched into a bank branch downtown, holding the power of attorney like it was the deed to a gold mine. He demanded an immediate home equity line of credit against my house, claiming I had authorized him to manage my financial affairs during my period of mental distress. The loan officer accepted the document with a professional smile. The moment my social security number entered the system, the distress signature triggered a silent federal fraud alert. The officer followed protocol perfectly. He told Marcus the application was approved but subject to a standard 72-hour review for high-value third-party authorizations. Marcus walked out of that bank, believing he was days away from a massive cash payout. He had no idea that the FBI Financial Crimes Unit was already building a case file with his name on it. That same afternoon, I authorized Mr. Callahan to execute the commercial lease penalty clause on the Drexel Avenue building. Marcus was 4 months behind on rent. The original landlord, my father, had quietly carried him out of love. That grace period was officially over. His rent was tripled immediately, all back payments were demanded in full, and a formal eviction notice was drafted for delivery within 72 hours. The next morning, my phone started exploding. Marcus called 11 times in 20 minutes. When I finally answered, his voice was cracking. "Vivian, something insane is happening. My office landlord just tripled my rent overnight. They are saying I owe tens of thousands in back payments and penalties. They are going to lock me out by Friday. I need you to push the bank to release that credit line faster. Call them. Tell them it is an emergency." I kept my voice soft and worried. I tried calling them, Marcus, but they said the review process cannot be accelerated. Maybe you should talk to your own bank about a bridge loan. He hung up screaming. That evening, my mother and Marcus showed up at my door unannounced. Marcus was sweating through his dress shirt. Lorraine's eyes were wild. They pushed past me into the living room, and Marcus threw a thick folder onto my coffee table. "This is a promissory note," Marcus said, his voice tight and aggressive. "Dad borrowed $800,000 from my business 3 years ago to cover medical expenses. I have the signed paperwork right here. Since you are the one inheriting his estate, you are legally obligated to repay this debt." I picked up the document and examined it. It was pathetic. The formatting was wrong, the dates did not match my father's actual medical timeline, and the signature at the bottom was clearly traced from an old birthday card. My father's real handwriting had a very specific rhythm that Marcus had never once bothered to study, but I did not challenge it. Not yet. Instead, I let my eyes go wide. I let my voice crack. I asked how this was possible. I told them I had no idea Dad had borrowed that kind of money. And while Marcus launched into an elaborate lie about offshore medical treatments and experimental drugs, I quietly activated the recording app on my phone sitting face up on the table, making sure every word of his fabricated story was captured in crystal clear audio. Then I asked the most important question. But Marcus, how did your consulting firm even have $800,000 to lend? You have always said cash flow was tight. How did you move that kind of money without it showing up on your tax filings? His ego swallowed the bait whole. He puffed up his chest and launched into a detailed explanation of how he had created shell entities to move money between accounts, inflated revenue projections to secure business loans, and used the borrowed capital to generate fake financial statements that attracted new investors. He was describing textbook securities fraud, wire fraud, and bank fraud, proudly, loudly, in my living room, on a recording that would eventually be played in a federal courtroom. Lorraine backed him up. She told me I was selfish for questioning Marcus. She said my father would be ashamed of me. She threatened to file a conservatorship petition to have me declared mentally unfit so they could seize control of my house and accounts. I let them threaten. I let them yell. I let them leave believing they had broken me. The conservatorship petition was filed the following Monday. They hired a psychiatrist who had never met me to write an evaluation, claiming I was suffering from severe grief psychosis. They submitted their own financial records to the court to demonstrate their fitness as guardians. They marched into that courthouse, genuinely believing they were about to steal my entire life. I showed up alone, carrying a single leather briefcase. The hearing lasted less than an hour. Their lawyer presented the psychiatric evaluation. Marcus testified under oath that he was a successful, solvent business owner who had generously loaned my father $800,000. My mother testified that I was erratic, delusional, and incapable of managing my own affairs. When the judge asked if I had anything to say in my defense, I stood up, opened my briefcase, and handed the bailiff a certified document from the Chicago Private Trust Management Group. It was the complete, notarized portfolio of my father's estate, showing $43 million in verified assets, all held in a trust with me as the sole legal beneficiary. The judge's expression changed the moment she read the first page. She looked at me over her glasses and asked if the figures were accurate. I confirmed they were. Then I told the court that the commercial building on Drexel Avenue, where Marcus claimed to operate his thriving consulting firm, was one of the properties in my father's trust. That building now belonged to me, and Marcus had been formally evicted from it 3 days prior for failure to pay rent. Marcus turned gray. He finally understood. The anonymous landlord who had destroyed his business, who had tripled his rent and locked him out of his own office, was his little sister, the same woman he was trying to have declared insane. I submitted the audio recording next. The judge listened as Marcus bragged about shell corporations, inflated financials, and interstate wire transfers. His own voice filled the courtroom describing federal crimes in explicit detail. I looked at the bench and told the judge that I had also been in communication with the FBI Financial Crimes Division. An agent was available to testify regarding an active investigation into the fraudulent power of attorney Marcus had submitted to a federally insured bank. The courtroom doors opened. Special Agent Diana Walsh walked down the center aisle, took the witness stand, and confirmed that Marcus was under active federal investigation for bank fraud, wire fraud, and attempted financial exploitation. The judge dismissed the conservatorship petition immediately and ordered the full court transcript forwarded to the district attorney for perjury charges against Marcus, Lorraine, and the psychiatrist who had filed the fraudulent evaluation. 2 federal marshals stepped forward. They approached Marcus, who was frozen in his seat, staring at the table like he could not process what was happening. They told him to stand and place his hands behind his back. Janelle screamed. My mother collapsed into her chair. Marcus stood up slowly, his designer suit suddenly looking like a costume on a deflating balloon. The handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists with a sound that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. It was the sound of 30 years of silence finally breaking. But the most satisfying moment did not come from the arrest. It came in the seconds immediately after, when my mother turned on Janelle and started screaming that this was all her fault for pushing Marcus to live beyond his means. Janelle screamed back that Lorraine had been funneling money from her own retirement to bankroll Marcus's fake empire for years. They tore each other apart in that courtroom like two animals fighting over the last scrap of food, and in doing so, they each confessed to their own roles in the financial scheme right in front of the judge, the FBI agent, and the court reporter who was capturing every single word. They destroyed each other. I did not have to lift another finger. 6 months later, Marcus was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. His consulting firm was dissolved. His Mercedes was repossessed. Janelle filed for divorce within a week of the sentencing and moved back to her mother's spare bedroom, where she started selling the designer clothes she had stolen from my house on a resale app to cover groceries. My mother lost everything in the perjury investigation. Her financial records revealed years of fraudulent tax filings and undisclosed cash transfers. She was forced to sell her house to cover legal fees and fines. The last I heard, she was renting a one-bedroom apartment across town, alone, and still telling anyone who would listen that I was the one who destroyed the family. I changed my number. I did not attend the sentencing. I did not respond to the letters. Instead, I took over management of my father's entire real estate portfolio. I hired a professional property management team. I moved my fraud investigation practice into the commercial building on Drexel Avenue, right into the same suite Marcus had been evicted from. I had the whole space gutted and rebuilt from scratch. The day I moved in, I hung a framed photograph of my father in the lobby. It is a picture of him in his janitor uniform, smiling, holding a set of keys. Underneath, a small brass plate reads, Raymond Caldwell, 1950, 6 to 2025. He built this, in silence. Tonight I am sitting in my new apartment on the 14th floor of a lakefront high-rise. Lake Michigan stretches out below me, dark and still, the city lights reflecting off the surface like scattered diamonds. It is quiet up here, peaceful. For the first time in my life, I do not feel like I have to earn my place at the table. I built my own table. My father knew exactly what kind of family he had married into. He knew Marcus would never respect honest work. He knew my mother would always choose the shiny child over the steady one, so he spent 30 years quietly, patiently, building something that none of them could touch. And he left it all to the one person who ever really saw him. I took a slow sip of my wine and looked out at the water. Family is not defined by blood. It is defined by who shows up, who stays, and who has the integrity to love you without conditions. When those things are missing, walking away is not abandonment. It is the bravest thing you will ever do. If you have ever had to cut toxic people out of your life to protect your peace, share your story in the comments below. And if this story reminded you to check on the quiet people in your life, the ones who never ask for anything, please like and subscribe. You never know what someone is building in silence.